I'm Andrew Davison, and today we've come to Tom Swinney's home here in Rothbury on a most gorgeous September day to talk about making bellows for Northumbrian Smallpipes. I'm a very amateur pipe maker and have made a few sets of pipes, but Tom is the real expert in making bellows. How many sets have you made, Tom?
Oh, between 300 and 400, but I haven't really kept a count. It's.
And how did you end up getting started on making bellows?
Well, I asked Colin Ross to show me how to do it,
yeah.
and that was about 2003. So I started making about 2004. So.
Did he show you how to do it to start off with?
He showed me how to get started, how to stitch things together, and it just took it from there, really. Yeah.
And since then you've made all of those sets for lots of different makers, because a lot of makers don't like making bellows, do they?
Pipe makers don't seem to, well, it's such a different technique from making pipes. I'd love to be able to make pipes, but I'm not a pipe maker, so...
Yeah.
Right,
but you think anybody can make a set of bellows?
I think anybody can make bellows, yes.
Well, let's see if today we can show people how to do it, eh?
I hope so, yes.
So what do you start with? And presumably the main thing is a good piece of wood for the bellows cheeks.
Yeah, well, you can start off with, planks of wood, plane them down to the right thickness.
Yeah.
And you've got to get the right wood. All English hardwoods, all British hardwoods are suitable. And yew, but not conifer. I'm talking about the bellows I make, which
yes.
I bend, and steam bending suits some woods, but not others.
And we probably should be clear that what we're trying to do today is the bellows, a traditional style set of bellows for Northumbrian small
Yes.
pipes. So normal size, normal shape, because you also make bellows for Scottish small pipes and half longs and border pipes, but those might be a little bit different. But it's all
bigger,
the same
yes,
principle.
That's all the same principle, yes.
So what do you look for in a piece of wood? What are you looking for?
Well, nice looking grain.
So some nice shapes and patterns in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've got to be careful with knots, because they tend to crack and split,
yeah.
and drop out sometimes. And it's not so much on this one.
But this piece here,
that piece there,
this
yes.
looks a lovely piece. This is yew, isn't it?
Yes, that's yew.
And it's about
nice.
the right
right thickness, yes. It
looks beautiful on that side, but
yeah.
you don't like this piece. Why?
Because it's got a crack.
So if we turn it over,
it's right down. Well, it may be useful if I could plane it, but it's yew's always a tricky wood to work with. It looks nice. There's some really nice pieces of yew, but it does tend to develop hairline cracks.
Is there any wood you really like using? Think is absolutely makes the best bellows you've come across?
I like Iroko. It works.
Was one of those pieces Iroko?
No, no, it's not.
Don't worry.
I put it.
What's so good about Iroko?
It's very stable. It works nicely. It takes a good finish. It looks nice. It's got very interesting grain to it.
And it bends well.
And it bends well. Yes, it's steam bends. I think what I use it for, it bends quite well.
Yes.
I think it's not the best steam bender, but it is still quite a good wood.
And if people were wanting to make themselves a set of bellows, obviously there's colour to take into account as well, depending on what sort of set of pipes you want. Yeah. So what sort of
well, if you want a light wood, the lightest I think would be ash. It's got a very interesting grain. It steam bends beautifully, but it is very...
Beech is quite nice too, isn't it? Or do you not like beech?
I find beech is a bit nondescript, but it would work all right. Yew is a pretty colour to it. It's a nice light coloured wood.
Yeah.
And then you get the darker ones like walnut and...
Would you use mahogany?
Mahogany, yes, if you can get it.
Yeah.
It steam bends okay as well, yes. Well,
because a lot of the old bellows were made with mahogany cheeks, weren't they?
Yeah. Yes, so well, I often wonder if the steam bent them in the early days, because there are some quite early curved bellows, but I've never been able to find out if they used steam bending techniques or cut them curved.
Okay.
Uh,
But your technique is steam bending.
yes.
And today we're going to look at how you make bellows,
Oh,
rather
yes,
how anybody
yeah,
else
yeah.
might make them. So you've chosen your wood, and you've got a nice piece which has got some nice figure in it, the right colour, the right sort of thing. What sort of thickness do you want to get it down to?
I aim to get it down to 8.5 millimetres, so that with a bit of sanding it'll end up round about 8 millimetres. It's not really important whether it's, you know, a bit thicker or a bit thinner, but I tend to aim for about 8 millimetres.
Okay.
It varies, but
So should we see how you do that then? Should we go and have a look at the machinery you use to turn something like this into something more like this? Because something like this is what you'd use to go to the second stage, isn't it?
That's it. Yes, okay. I'll turn this into a bellows cheek, and then you can see what's what. Then.
Okay, let's go and have a look at the planing machine and see how that works.
Right.
So Tom, we've now come into your garage, and the first step you said was planing the wood to the right thickness.
Yes.
And you've got this wonderful machine here which looks like it's seen some service over the years. Yes. How long have you had that?
Quite a long time. I can't remember when I bought it. No, I realised I needed. So if you go to a dealer in wood and ask for the wood the right thickness, it costs a fortune, and it's not always available. If you have one of these, you can get wood from anywhere and you know, make it fit. It's a thicknesser. It's they're known as thicknessers.
So you can use this to take a piece of wood that's thick and bring it down to that 8.5 millimetres that you were talking about before.
That's what I aim for. So it's easy enough to get planks like that, or you know, and just plane them down to the right. Seems a shame. I'd like to be able to split them down the middle, but I can't find any kind of saw which is precise enough to go.
What,
to
so you
make
mean
it
you
straight.
Could get two sets of bellows, two sets
could do,
of wood instead of one, but we'll just plane this down.
Yes.
Okay, so this piece of wood has got some lovely pattern and figure in it, but it's too thick and it's rough on one side.
Yes.
This we think this is probably cedar, don't we? Because you've got it from Willie Robson's honey farm up on the Tweed.
Yes.
And it's the right size for a beehive.
Oh, yes.
And they're made of cedar, and the smell is a bit like cedar. So that's
gosh,
probably what it is.
Yeah.
So do you want to show us how you go about getting this to the right size? We'll just take it through once or twice, but you're going to put some ear defenders on first.
Terrific noise it makes.
And before you switch it on, Tom. So we have the thicknessing and planer going, and also a vacuum here that takes away all of the dust and makes it much more healthy. It also saves up on the cleaning afterwards.
It does.
And then you've ended up. Do you want to say where you're getting to with that? How much more work needs to be done?
Have to do several more passes to get it to the right thickness, but it's getting there. It's nice, and you know.
And then you cut that to the right size for a bellows cheek.
Yeah, it's. I haven't got any equipment here.
So that
yes,
cut it to about that sort of size.
Yes.
Just using what, a bandsaw or a handsaw? What would you use to do that? A bandsaw is by far the quickest if you've got one with that depth. Okay.
Either that or a handsaw, which on the wall there are quite quick.
Should we take this now and show how you turn this into a bellows cheek?
Bellows cheek, right? Yes.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Okay, so we're now going to turn that board into the bellows cheek, and you've got some plans here, Tom. Can you talk talk us through what these are.
Yes, the fixed dimensions at 9 inches. That's a 4.5 inch diameter circle, and a 2 1/4 across this end. These pretty well optional, but there's not much, movement, you know, for different ideas. But that's the pretty standard shape for bellows. It goes back a long way, and
so that's the shape we've got to get from that.
It's lived a bit for individuality, that where you put these. Yeah. So that's my shape.
And to do that,
and to get the template,
this sheet.
The template cuts 6 millimeters further out from the cutter is 6 millimeters out from the template, so the template has to be 6 millimeter.
So that's the template you've
Yes,
made.
that's the template.
And that's the 6 millimeters in on all dimensions.
Yeah.
Okay. So show us how you take the wood, the template, and produce the shaped sheet.
All right. That's sticky. It'll take a little while, this to.
That's all right. So this is double-sided sticky tape.
Double-sided sticky tape, yes. That's that one. I'll just rub it down to make sure it's. And do the same for this.
Right. So what's this that you've got?
Just to make sure it stays on the. This is the same size as the template. Really, it's just an anvil, just to hold the thing steady without getting in the way of the cutter.
Right. And you're saying it's grown in height because when you accidentally cut into the template, you nail it on and make another template. Things
have happened in the past, and the templates are well. You've got to make the templates very accurately, otherwise things don't look very nice.
It saves a lot of work later on if you can get this stage right.
It's very handy stuff, double-sided sticky tape. Now, my you let it try.
You want to take these off?
Try and peel it off. I have a pair of medical forceps clamps or something like that, ideal for this job, but they're in the house.
That's right.
Now, make sure that there's clearance. You know, I don't want to find it's got flat sides on it or anything, but.
And so you're choosing the best bit of figure in the wood.
Yes, well, actually, I did mark it out just to give me an idea where the best position was.
Okay.
And now stick that on that, holding it. Yeah, that's why you just you see the template leaves enough clearance for the cutter to go around. So I find this is quite useful.
This is the subtle technique.
Yes, a very subtle technique. Yes, people have been very amused at that, but it works.
Brilliant. So we've got it set up now, and you've got your template on where you roughly marked the best bit of the wood.
Yeah.
And the template goes longer. There's a line here that shows where the bellows themselves will end
up.
Yeah,
that's it.
And this is an extra bit to help you hold it for doing various things. So
seems quite rigid this time.
Okay. And then what are you going to use to do the cutting?
Oh, you want to see that's the cutting tool.
So it's an ordinary woodworking router.
Yes.
And
a straight cutter and a guide bush.
Right.
I've got the dimensions on that paper there. I can't remember.
And the guide bush was 6 millimeters from centre.
Yes, that gap 6 millimeters. So
that's really why you have that 6 millimeter.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Gap. If you had a different guide there, you'd need to make
sure.
Oh
yes, you could get different diameters of all these things.
And is it a particular cutter that you're using? Just an ordinary routing?
Just an ordinary routing cutter. It's a spiral cut one, but straight cut ones, and
Okay.
I think this is.
So you better just put your.
I'll just make
your
sure it's.
defenders on, and I'd better switch the power on.
I'll try it and see. That's all there is to it, really.
So what have we got now?
I don't like that. If the grain's running, I think it's probably.
It's just taken a little bit of the edge of the wood off.
Probably recoverable, that. But if the grain is, you know, and it's cutting very close to the edge.
Yes. So it's just taken a little bit of the edge off there. So you may well discard that normally.
Oh, would you? It would do, yeah. But
if it's not recoverable, but it shows you how the technique has worked.
Yes, normally I would. This would be in a. You know, you get two out of here, but
yes,
to be in a position, you know, much further from the side, so that they can't get that.
But what we've ended up with is a beautifully smooth curve, all of the shape of the cheek there now.
Oh yes, it's.
And you'd then take that up to your workshop to do the next stage on it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So you wouldn't do any other sanding or any other preparation at this stage?
Not usually, no. If for some reason it was very rough, I might put it on the belt sander.
Okay.
As it goes over. But I'd just really, might as well just go ahead now. Put the groove in and the stitch holes. That's the next.
Okay.
The next stage.
So we'll move on to that next.
Yeah.
Okay. So Tom, you've shown us how to make the bellows cheeks. Before we go up into the workshop to see how you cut the grooves for the stitching and do the other phases, on your bellows you normally put some inlay in the stitching groove to finish the bellows. So how do you make the inlay?
Yeah. Well, the inlay, I decided that birch was as good as anything to use. It looks silver birch, yes, it looks nice and it works nicely. Got to find a tree that is, you know, a good straight tree with probably no branches if possible, because you don't want knots, and get it to about like that. And
so roughly how long would that be? A couple of feet?
A couple of feet, yes, I think it's. And that's where the saws there. Just you saw the tree down, get rid of a large lump of tree and cut a nice piece out, and then you can split the.
So before you split it, do you keep it for any particular length of time, or do you split it straight away?
Well, I think it's best to split it as soon as possible, and then keep it, you know, split afterwards. Keep it for a few weeks to dry out, but it doesn't take long, especially when you've got it down, you know, to this. It soon dries out. Do
you cut it at a particular time of year, or does it just not matter?
I'd avoid the springtime, because if the sap's rising, the wood gets really soggy, and if you cut a branch off a birch tree in the spring, and the sap will pour out. That's why I think that's what they make it into a drink, don't they?
Okay, yes, I think.
But so autumn times probably, you know, summer or autumn, or even winter, when the sap isn't rising, so the wood's drier, and as I say, straight as possible, and with as few knots as possible. This isn't a very suitable piece, but it cut that into quarter.
And you just use an axe to
use an axe to get to there.
Yeah.
And then this handy tool is
it's a hedging tool, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. You can split, you know, to
just tidy it up a bit
to get a piece like that, and then.
So what are you aiming to achieve? Is it any particular thickness, or?
Well, as close as possible to the 2 millimeters that. Yeah, but it's usually slightly thicker, so I finish it off on the belt sander. But this is a, you know, a normal planer. I'd take that to something like this and end up with a piece, a smooth piece like that.
So you just clamp that onto your workbench and plane it with it.
Yes, just keep going over and over the planer until it comes down to a right thickness. That's just a rough bit.
And you're aiming for roughly 2 millimetres plus a bit before you take it to the sander.
Yeah. And then I would cut out using that tool.
So what's this?
That's you call them a cutting gauge, I think is. You usually get marking gauges which have a little point on them, but this has got a blade on it. So if you cut it like that, it cuts into the wood.
Strip.
Yes, it cuts the wood to the right thickness.
And what thickness are you putting on that? Is it again about 2 millimetres?
Yes, this is too thick really. So it would have to be. Well, I could cut a strip off here, say, and put it on the sander to it takes several cuts usually because it doesn't go very far. But anyhow.
But that gauge is set for 2 millimetres, and you're aiming to get the wood roughly 2 millimetres square.
Well, yes, it's set as far as it'll go actually. But, usually you have to. It's not a really good piece of wood, but just keep on going until you end up with a strip.
And then that's what you.
And then you end up with strips like that, which you can put on the belt sander just to make sure that they're thin enough. 2 millimetres maximum, really, and not too thin either. But 2 millimetres are just slightly under.
And you want it square, do you? 2 millimetres square, or does
No. What happens is you sand off the excess afterwards. So anything that's standing proud can be either pared away with a scalpel or sanded off.
So it's 2 millimetres wide, and it doesn't matter so much about how.
Press it tightly into the groove with a glue.
Yes.
And that's it. Anything that stands proud of the groove has to be sanded down.
And we'll see that later on.
Yes.
Okay. So should we just show? Do you want to show us how you take that through your sanding machine to get the 2 millimetre thickness?
Well, it's pretty well there, I think. But
so we've got the rough stringing here, and we're going to get it exactly 2 millimetres thick using the sanding machine.
Yeah.
So what's this clever piece of equipment here?
It's just a little bridge with a 2 millimetre gap, so that anything that comes, through is 2 millimetres.
And how have you made that? We just turn it on its edge here.
Yes.
So you've just got a good piece of wood and a plate.
Yes.
Some things to stop it going sideways, and then you've just stuck 2 pieces of.
Yes, to raise it up to the right height.
Sit on the bed of the thing and leave an exactly 2 millimetre gap. Yeah?
Yes, that's
okay. So do you want to show us how it works?
Right. Just like this. And that's it.
Brilliant. And that gives you perfectly smooth.
Doing it over there just to be sure.
Fantastic. Well done. So now we're ready to move into the workshop.
Yeah.
Great. Let's go and have a look.
When I got this, I wonder why do these things have a thing on the side? It was not that well, a year or two back now, but I realised that those little pieces I use on the those hinge, I call them hinge plates. They've got beveled edges, so if you put that in there like that and just push it against that.
So maybe we can come and see that later on.
It does that exactly. And I used to do it freehand, and it was a bit iffy, but doing that.
We'll come back and have a look at that later on. So let's go up to the workshop.
Right.
So Tom, we've come into your inside workshop, and when we came in, you showed me this wonderful file here. Do you want to just tell me what it is?
Well, it's just a collection of templates I've made for the different size bellows, 9.
So we're doing 9 today, aren't we?
That's
the standard 9.
Normal size, yes. 9.5, slightly bigger.
Exactly
the same proportions. is a 9, but just a tiny bit bigger.
Why would you do that?
9.5 inches. Because people ask for it.
What's the benefit of a 9.5?
Slightly bigger air production, I think. But I think it's one of these things that some people like. I think
personal preference.
Personal, yes.
Okay.
And then that was an 8-inch one. I had child-sized bellows. I think those miniature bellows were just dreadful. I can't imagine anybody playing pipes with bellows that were so tiny. They looked very cute, but how much use were there? So this is a cut down from the standard size.
So
bellows.
all the proportions are still the same. It's just that they slightly
just
shrink.
Made them slightly smaller. Yes.
And then you also have a 10-inch.
A 10-inch, which is the same proportions as the 9-inch bellows, but bigger again for border pipes and things like that, which is quite handy. And where's that gone? It's it's not in. That is for the. I think yes. I think they've just changed position for some reason.
Okay.
Yes, I think that's another border pipe. I think that's a more standard size for border pipes. It's a
slightly different shape.
A different shape, yes. Something I
a fatter cheek.
Don't use much. I do have the templates for it.
And then what's this one here? Is that
and that's the old-fashioned pastoral pipe bellows. Okay. I think that's a template for it, so the actual cheek would be bigger than that.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, that was the.
So that's the template you use for doing the routing. So the cheek ends up the larger shape. Size. Yes. And when you're making those templates, you were telling me that you use your bandsaw.
Cut them out. Yes, cut them out roughly on the bandsaw, and then finish them off accurately on the belt sander, so that you can sand them down exactly to the line that you've drawn, and make sure that they are accurate, because that's going to be the bellows, and they've got to be spot on all the way around.
Okay. And when I was going through this file, I also found, if I can put that down somewhere, also found this interesting piece. So just explain that one to me.
No, that was just a way of placing it on a wood to find out where the nicest grain was. If you could move it around and say, well, like make a bellows cheek out of there and cut it out from there. But
so it's just, this is the piece of wood we were planing earlier on. So you take this piece of wood, look at its figure, and use this nice clear piece of plastic to choose the best figure, which is then the piece you will select for doing the cheeks.
Put your actual template on there.
Okay. So we'll come on to the next step. This was the piece of wood that we cut outside, and we had a little bit extra left over. Yeah. So show us what happens next.
That's just a template exactly the size of the one I'm making. Make sure it's square on there. Draw a line across. Nice and
so this is now to get the actual final shaping of the bellows cheek.
And then just cut it off. If necessary, I could just give it a quick spin on the belt sander, but usually they're pretty straight. That's all there is to it, really. Okay,
and then we'll take that across and we'll do the groove for the stitching and the stitch holes next. So that
I've got some cheeks ready there that need doing, so
we'll do that next.
We'll do them next. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the next crucial stage, Tom, is marking and cutting the slots for the stitching, and then for the hinge and things. So talk us through how you take what we've brought in now from outside, which is the raw cheek.
Yeah. Well, what I want to do first is cut the slot for the stitching, and the first part of the slot is the the straight one that goes along the hinge end here. So
Yes.
I mark that. It gives me a place to start, to go when I go right round. And then I'll change the fence for this one to cut the straight
Yes.
part. And
So what's this machine that you're going to use?
This is it's quite an accurate drill. Sometimes known as mill drills, because you can they use a very similar one as a mill, so it can take stand quite a bit of side load. And I've got this 2mm round nose milling cutter mounted into this drill. And
so round-ended rather than a
it's
flat
just a
end?
round-nosed milling. Yes, it's
Okay.
usually that doesn't really matter that much, but I like the idea of having a bit round-nosed.
Yes.
And then it just you've got to set this up so that it has a readout here, which I will start that onto the on the starting place. Zero that. Starting up. 2 millimeters.
So it's 2 millimeters deep.
Yeah, somewhere about 2 millimeters. And just go.
And you're just pushing it against that
Yeah.
push as you
Just
go.
keeping it perpendicular to this feather stick.
And then you stop on the line that you marked earlier.
Yeah, stop on that line, right.
And then lift the drill, the cutter out.
No.
So a really important bit is that white bush. Did you make that yourself? This
Yes,
this
that's
guide?
just a stop to get that's a quarter of an inch. It's fairly average, but a quarter of an inch gap
between the edge
yes,
of the
yes.
bush and the
Yes,
centre of
yes,
the drill.
It's what looks right, really, and then that comes out about right. No, I usually I'll change this one for. I'll do both cheeks, and then change this fence for the.
And you only cut one side of the wood?
Yes, that's an interesting thing. A lot of old bellows have got a groove on the leather side as well, on with the side where the leather is stitched to. The way Colin showed me, never bothered with that, and I found out it's never been necessary. It might be an advantage if you put a shallow groove round, but I don't think it's a necessary thing to do. If you've got the 2 millimeter deep groove there, now this one across here, I'll make 2.5 millimeters deep because it's a double stitching along the.
So it's the same width, but two and a half instead of 2 millimeters deep.
I'll take this this thing off and put this one on. Now this one I've got to make sure that it's in the right place, because that one is, I've got this set permanently for the other one, it's just up against that, but this one...
You adjust this each time you do
this, yes, I'll have to lift this up a bit. Make sure it's in the centre. Tight now. Got to make sure that's tight.
Yes, because you don't want to slip it while you're in the middle of doing the drilling.
You wonder what's happening. Oh, start again. Right, so that's on the line.
And the positioning of this line, it isn't critical, is it? It's more for aesthetics as to exactly where it sits. You've got to leave enough room for the bellows hinge plates.
Yeah, that's it.
But apart from that, it's just by eye where you put it. There's no strict measurement for that.
I keep it pretty much the same for every pair of bellows. It looks right, so it's.
You've got it marked on your metal template, and you just refer back to that each time.
So I'll put that back to there. Zero that.
This is now 2.5 mil.
It's, you know, you just and that's done.
And you do exactly the same on the other cheek.
Yeah.
There's no difference at all between top cheek and bottom cheek.
Yeah, they're both exactly the same. I usually look at them like this: which is going to be the top one, which is going to be the bottom one? Because sometimes it's quite obvious, and other times you think, well, have I made the right choice?
Yes. And the best figure will be on the side that you cut the slot in, because this will be the bit that you see.
Well, yes, that's always look for a nice bit. If they're very similar, well, you say, what's that? Well, which would you choose? You know.
Yeah.
Okay. Especially, no, I would. The corners here, I'd make sure they're cut nice and square with a little. Just a minute now. Can I get across here with this? This here and a microscope. I usually use the microscope to make sure that I'm cutting, just try to make sure that these corners are nice and square. But
that's just a modelling knife that you've designed.
It's just a cut off, just a sharp blade, really. It's nothing, you know. It's any old.
But the reason is to get the edges of that absolutely clear.
Get them nicely square, yes.
Sharp, and that's where you see the difference between a professional set and an amateur one. It's that attention to detail.
Well, now, just to clean that up, the easiest way now is just to slap that on the belt sander, and it'll shift most of that gunge, and you just have to make sure the groove's clear as well. But just putting that on the belt sander will shift nearly all of that rubbish and make it a lot easier to work with.
Okay, so the next step is going and putting the stitching holes in.
Yeah.
So you've just put it through the belt sander to take that rough off from the slot cutting, and what you're doing now?
No, I just want to clean out the slot so that it's.
That's just with a scriber.
It's the width of the slot. It's best if it doesn't jump out, because it's when you're doing this, because it can do an awful lot of. They've got to press hard.
It's just cleaning it up,
just cleaning it
getting
out,
all of this.
I clean the groove
the dust out.
Yes, as I say, if you do this and it jumps out the slot, it can scratch the wood terribly. So you've got to be careful doing it.
Okay.
Right, now I want to mark the very centre at the top.
Why is that important?
For stitching, it means that I'll stitch down one side and then I'll stitch down the other side, and I know exactly how much it's going to take on each.
Yes.
So two separate rows of stitching.
Yeah.
And the groove across here, I've got a. They're about 1/4 of an inch apart, but.
So this is your template stick that you just push into the slot.
Yes, it's just a bit of a marker, just they're about 1/4 of an inch apart, as long as you've got the two centre ones straddling the centre, so that they more or less line up with the stitching on the leather, on the hinge end of the leather. Well, that's just to mark the position of those holes there. And I've got this piece of wire which fortunately just fits in the groove, and I've marked it. They're about 8mm. You know, it's.
Is this just a piece of electrical wire?
Just a bit of old wire. Yeah. Yes, it fits.
It's about 2mm and fits in.
It just fits slot. In the groove. Yes.
And you've marked it. Was that 8mm?
8mm
between each hole marker.
If it doesn't mark there, but I can just sort of take it into consideration, mark it off as you go, so that you can. You do this on both sides. These are just to mark the position of the stitching holes.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of people doing it freehand, but it's
a very clever way of doing it.
Freehand now. Turn it round and do the other side. So better fit this side. I used to use a ruler and measure it, but it took ages.
That's so much easier. Good.
And that's it.
So that's all marked up.
That's all ready for drilling now.
Hold that still, Tom.
Before you turn it on, the machine you're using, where did that one come from, or where would people find something like that?
I think the best place is for the Sieg Electrical Company. I think it's Sieg Electrical of Shanghai. It's also sold by Axminster Tools, but they tend to charge a bit extra for it. It's made by this Sieg company. It's quite a substantial bit of kit, and it seems to be, you know, very, very accurate for using fine drills and things as well. So
the drill you're about to use, this is to cut the stitching cut the holes for the stitching.
Yeah.
What size drill are you using?
2mm drill.
It's an ordinary twist drill.
Just an ordinary 2mm twist drill, yeah. And
you've got a block of wood underneath the wood, so you can push your drill all the way through the wood without damaging the drill.
There's normally a hole there, but I think it's having a bit just you know, where it hits there.
Yes.
Stops it splintering. It stops it a bit, I think. Yes. It's better than not.
Okay.
It's not necessarily, but anyhow, I'll drill this row of holes there. That's it. See, it's not doesn't splinter too badly there. Now I've got to change this one for the fence I used for the where's my spanner? Oh, there it is.
So you're going to use exactly the same fence as you used for cutting the slots?
Yes. Where did I put it? I'm looking at it and I can't see it. This is the position I've set it I use it for all the bellows. So
you just leave that bar on all of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, the next part doesn't take very long.
Not once it's set up, it's setting things up that takes the
yeah,
time.
Oh yes, so are you ready to go? I think I'm good.
And you're just following those pencil marks that you made earlier on with the wire.
Yeah. Have a good look at the back to make sure I haven't missed any. Oh, they're okay. So that's all there is to that. Now just a matter of getting rid of the pencil marks. You can get rid of those just using a rubber. If you use a sander, they seem to be very persistent, but if you use a rubber, they come off pretty quickly. Anyhow, that's that stage done.
Okay, so what's the next step?
The next step now is cutting the rebate and drilling the holes.
Would you do those before you steam them or afterwards?
No, of course, yes. The next step is steaming. I'm forgetting.
Okay.
You could go.
So if you were going to make a flat set of bellows, you'd move straight on to cutting.
You could
holes.
put the hole straight in.
Yes.
and
but if you're going to make a curved set of bellows, the next step is the steaming.
Yeah. If you don't want to do an elaborate all leather hinge, you can put a couple of holes in there, and same with the other cheek, and you've got a leather thong, and you've got a hinge, which is a lot easier to make.
Okay.
I don't know how durable it is, but it seems to be very old and traditional.
So we're going to work out now how you achieve bending the bellows. Of course, the most comfortable bellows have got a slight curve on, so they go around your body better.
Well, I think that, to me it's more the aesthetic appearance of the bellows. Just the curve looks right as well, but people say they do like it is more comfortable. So,
so how do you go about getting the curve in the bellows?
Well, I've tried various means of heating. It's really heating the wood using steam, and I've ended up using a pressure cooker, and this is it. I just put the
just an ordinary pressure cooker.
Ordinary pressure cooker.
What have you got in the bottom there?
Well, there's a thing in the bottom of it. Well, I'm just using that to make sure that the bellows aren't sitting in the water in the bottom, because I'll put the bellows in, the cheeks in like that.
And you were saying there's an important order.
I'll put it so that the one I want to be the front bellows, the front of the cheeks, the one that shows on the top. So when it comes out first and goes into the press, it'll come out curved in the right way. And then all it is pour some boiling water in there, enough, about half a cup of water or something like that, to do half an hour of steaming. That's quite arbitrary, but I think it's enough to get the wood nice and hot. And after that, take the wood out and press it and put it in the press. But
we'll see that later on.
Yeah.
But just is there any particular pressure that you set the cooker to?
No. I think it's more just heating the wood is the main thing. I just set the pressure cooker to go what it's designed to, but I'm not sure
And this particular pressure cooker, it just goes on the top of the normal
just an ordinary
kitchen
old-fashioned pressure cooker, yes, goes on top of the hob. Just leave it there for half an hour and let the steam out and take them out and press them.
Okay, we'll go and do that then.
You can always tell when you put them in the press, the wood, it softens the wood, and you can feel it. You can feel it bending under the pressure. And some wood, for some tropical hardwoods, especially, do not like being bent. They start off like that and they end up like that. And it's you can feel them. They're fighting against it. They can't. You can feel a huge amount of pressure to make them do anything at all. And all they're doing is breaking the wood. But most of the interesting hardwoods bend quite well. So I'll put this on.
Okay, we'll go and do that.
I'll go and put this on the stove now, and then we can put them in the press. Is that okay?
So while you're steaming the wood, Tom, we're going to have a go at the metal work. And do you want to show us what we're going to make first?
That's the outlet.
So this is the air outlet.
Yeah.
So what do you start with? Is it a sheet of brass you would use?
The brass sheet, yes, just a 16 gauge brass. That's my choice.
And then you cut it out on a guillotine.
Cut it on a guillotine.
To what sort of size is that?
1.5 by 1 1/4. So you get these little oblongs, and then mark it.
And how far in are you going?
In 1/8 of an inches. Just use, you set that as 1/8 of an inch.
Yes.
And then put the punch on it, hold the punch. That's what I like to use with a microscope. And then just like that.
And that punches the position.
And this is what drills the holes.
And what's this clever machine? Is it just a?
I think that's it. Pips in the right place.
And it just punches a hole out.
Yeah, so you've got a hole.
That's really neat. And then the one you've got on the right there, that's just another one where you've done all the corners and a centre hole to mark where you're going to cut the main outlet.
Yeah.
What tool do you use to cut the main outlet?
The main, it's out here. This.
If you just hold it up for the camera.
Yes, it's to cut a hole that size.
You hold it up close for the camera so we can see what it is. And it's got a centre drill and then an outer cutter and a spring to push it out.
It's a 60mm hole.
16?
Yeah. So I'll put this in the... that's it. Mount it in there.
Why do you do that?
Stop it moving about.
Okay, so it stops it spinning when you're doing the cut.
It keeps it nice and firm while what I'll do now is I must put it in the...
You'd put it in your drill?
In the drilling machine, yes, that's why it's got a big washer on the back.
And you just simply use that drill to
cut a hole like that. Now, I found I always used to use cup washers to I don't know an example to hold the belt in position on the back of the bellows, but I found this bit that's cut out the centre of here looks much nicer than a cup washer, and it's solid brass as well. So I just tied it up a bit and you make use of it. Yeah, well that disc looks like that, and it makes a very nice fitting for the belt rather than using a cup washer. Cup washers are brass plated steel, not very nice, but this, I think it makes use of it as well. Countersink that hole with just a wider drill there, and polish it up a bit, and you can see how nicely it...
and that just holds the belt in place and stops it sliding through when you've got your bellows on.
Yes.
Okay.
So Colin showed me that everybody uses these old-fashioned cup washers. You know that? Have you seen them? And they're quite good, but I thought, well, got this wine, it looks better.
Okay.
Right.
So we've got the flat plate. Now we have to make the tube that will be where the air comes out. So what size tube do you use, Tom?
3/4 inch.
Okay, and that's showing us the piece that you want to make.
Yes, I want to make a piece like that.
And the way you do that is you just push it into
clamp it
your...
in this mitre block.
You've got a nice jig that you've made there with some lines on. The lines show the positioning of the tube.
Put the tube in the right position and clamp it up. Oh, it's not working. Anyhow, if the tube is in that position
there, and then you just clamp it on, and then just use a hacksaw to cut across
there.
Okay. Yes, and that ends up with the piece of tube you've got just under your right hand.
Oh yes, okay, that's it there. Yes, that's what
I see. Perfect. So what do you do with it once you've got it cut like that?
Well, these have got to be annealed, softened so that they don't. When you hammer them, they bend nicely.
Right.
So it's just a matter of heating it, getting it almost red hot, and dropping it. Cold water would do, but it is not ideal because it always leaves a very tenacious film on the surface. But if I use dilute hydrochloric acid, it comes out nice and clean.
Where do you get your dilute hydrochloric acid from?
It's a drain cleaner that you get from the hardware store.
Okay.
And it's very good for silver soldering as well.
Do you know, is there a particular brand or is it just drain cleaner?
I don't know, I'll have to show you the bottle. It's different brands, I know. It's just Sonos stuff.
And you use it as it comes out of the bottle, do you? Or do you
dilute it?
You dilute it further?
I was quite surprised how you can get such powerful hydrochloric acid, just at a hardware shop, yeah.
Okay. So you heat it up, cherry red, drop it into your acid, and that softens it.
That softens it. And when it's cold, you're just ready to form this lip on it. That's
why do you need that lip?
It don't. For aesthetic reasons, as much as anything, it looks much. It looks finished.
So you can see there's just a very slight lip put on it.
Yeah.
And to do that, you've pushed it into that old washer.
Well, this nut is bored out to exactly the diameter of this and cut there, so that it can be put in a vice, and that holds it tight. It can't. It grips it tight.
And now it's in the vice, and you've set it so that the brass tube is sitting just proud.
Yes.
Roughly how high up would that be? It's about an eighth of an inch or something?
About a couple of millimetres.
A couple of millimetres high. And now you're going to put that lip on.
Yes, it needs probably our commercial tools which could flare it out in one go, but I haven't come across them yet, and they'd be too expensive. But if you tap it around with a ball peen hammer, you can.
And it's just to put that slight flare on it.
Yeah.
So when you've finished tapping it to get that flare, you then take it out of the vice, put it on that mandrel that you've got it on, and it just pushes onto that, slightly tapered.
Yes, it jams on.
And then that'll go in the lathe, spin it round, and then you can tidy it up a little bit.
Endways on and sideways on, and it makes a much neater job. And if you finish it off with a little bit of abrasive sandpaper or steel wool or something, it looks even nicer.
And it ends up like the one in front of us here on the set of bellows with just that flare. Okay, so the next bit would be silver soldering the tube onto the base plate. Yeah. Now you've got the base plate and your tube tidied up. You take that back to the garage where you've got your blowtorch. The angle on the tube is what?
45 degrees.
And at 45 degrees, do you need to wire it together to silver solder? It just
sits nicely just by itself like that. The art is, the knack is of making sure that, you know, you usually put it on and tap it gently with a piece of wire or something until it looks right.
Okay.
You line them up. If you make, you know, 3 or 4 at a time and line them up, you want the ball to be looking pretty much the same. When it first started out, they didn't. But now, you know, I can put them together and have a walk around them, and sometimes I'm not satisfied. But
you don't clamp it or wire it or anything?
No, just like that. But before you do that, put a bit of flux, just paint a bit of flux around there.
Yes. And
sit it on there, and then about a little bit of silver solder, just lie it next to the joint.
So you clip little bits of silver solder and position them, do you, rather than
silver solder wire about a millimetre, just over a millimetre thick anyhow, and about half an inch of that would do.
Do you use easy, medium, hard?
The softest, the lowest temperature silver solder, yes. And even that's got to be red hot. And I usually heat it from this end so that this part heats up first. Well, it heats everything up fairly evenly, and then when it's right, you can just turn the blowtorch on the solder, and it suddenly melts and flashes around the joint in a very satisfactory way.
And then do you let it cool by itself, or do you?
Well, once it's done that, it's pretty well cooled anyhow, and.
Do you then drop it in your acid again?
I don't. Yes, I just to drop it in the acid, and that it's supposed to clean it. It makes it easier to clean, I think. But
and then after that, do you do much further work on it in terms of filing and cleaning, or do you put it straight on the polishing mop?
Mostly, it's just. Polishing, getting rid of any. There's often a lot of pinkish corrosion, not corrosion.
Flux.
I don't know if it comes from the flux. It's quite difficult to shift, but one way I have of doing this is to fix the thing. You know, put a piece of wood in there so it's held in that position. Put it in the vise, and now when you tear strips off old sheets, that is a very useful part. The seam, and if you've used it before, the seams of sheets, you can put polish on them and really gives them a good polishing.
Excellent. So we've got a set of finished bellows here, Tom, and we're going to now look at all of the fittings that go on them. The belt is just, what, 1 inch leather?
1 inch wide, yes.
And the buckle?
They say it's a 1 inch buckle.
And do you make that, or do you buy those in?
The buckles come ready made. They're a nice pattern. I don't think anybody could make, you know, individual ones any better than those ones. I like them.
Is there a particular place you get those from?
Le Prévost, it's like this one here.
Le Prévost in Newcastle.
Yeah.
Okay, and the leather for the belt, does that come from there as well?
Yeah, you call it split hides. It's a bit thicker than the
split hide.
Split. Well, I think most hides split. Actually, it's thickness ways. So the hide is the stuff that's the inside part. So it's the split of quite a thick layer. You can sometimes see blood vessels on the inside.
Okay, and that's about 1/8 of an inch thick, isn't it?
Yes, it's quite stiff leather.
It's good, strong leather. Yes.
And,
okay. And then we've already seen you making the bellows air outlet here.
It needs a gasket under there. I usually use either a bit of soft leather or I found neoprene foam works as well. But
when you screw it on, what sort of screws do you use?
3 by 3 32nd roundhead brass screws, I think.
And you use the same screws for all the fittings?
Yes, apart from that one, yes.
Apart from the larger one there. Do you know what that one would be?
It's on the books there. It's just,
Okay.
it's a count. It's the only countersunk one, and it's a bit longer because of the thickness it's got to go through.
Okay. So the other fittings that we need to make, we've got the end plates that you use to hold the leather hinge in place. That's just the same brass sheet. What was it? 16 gauge.
16 gauge, 1.6 millimeters.
And cut out using the guillotine, and then you use
that sander. Yes, the disc sander it is on there.
So when we saw earlier on, you had the belt sander on the side of that. There was a disc.
Disc to do these.
And you just put it in a mitre and push it up against, and it gives you the angle you want. Okay. Then we've got the fittings here for the strap to go around your arm. Again, the leather strap, is that something that you just buy the buckle?
Yes, buy the buckles. Buckles are always so well made, bought ones, and they fit nicely, so there's no point in making them. You can't buy bits like that.
Yes. So the buckle it's got a rotating bit of metal there, just because it makes it work nicely.
I don't think it makes any difference. But
right.
It looks nice.
Okay, and that belt is cut from, is that the same materials used for the belt, or is it soft? Feels a bit softer.
Well, no, it's not. It's from the same as this part usually. It's the actual bellows, not the belt.
Right.
It's it would be too stiff. I've got some thick leather. It is far too stiff if you use this leather. Okay,
and that's stitched in, so we'll see some stitching later on.
Oh yes,
you'd stitch that in.
I just do that on top of the existing stitching. It's easier to replace or to work on.
So you'd stitch the bellows generally first, and then afterwards you'd come back and you'd stitch that on. So if that needs to be replaced, you can do it without restitching the whole bellows.
Yeah, and people have set that underneath the bellows.
I've seen that done before, and then when that snaps or is worn out, you have to restitch all the bellows.
Well, I had a pair of bellows, I think it was Matt's old bellows. It was almost through there, worn through.
Yes.
So what I did was make a similar kind of loop to that, really, just there. So that I could put fix the strap there, which works just as well, and does away with having to stitch it in there.
Okay. So we're going to look at how you make the other fitting. So you've got a plate here with a loop on.
Yeah.
And then on the belt that goes over your arm, you've got this fitting that clips on. So we're going to see how you make those in a moment. And the other fitting are the two plates here that you've bent into shape so that they hold the belt in the right place.
Yeah, so they're surprising. It took more working out how to make nice even ones of those, because the slightest unevenness, if one side's longer than the other, it looks horrible.
Yes.
And it took, until I made a proper jig for it, it's quite a difficult job to do.
So if we look at the parts for each of those, so looking closely at each of the fittings, all of the flat parts are made from your same 16 gauge brass sheet. The round wire parts, what size do you use for that?
3 32nd diameter brass rod.
Okay. And you anneal everything before you start working it? By heating it up, you were explaining earlier.
Yes. I need to anneal the brass rod, especially to bend it.
Yes.
And this gets annealed anyhow when it's been soldered up by, quenching it after the soldering. So
this piece here is made of two parts. You've got your brass sheet, which is bent around and then soldered onto the rod which you've bent into that loop. And we'll see how you do that in a moment. Then that hooks on to the piece fixed to the bellows, which is this piece here. Again, a piece of sheet cut to shape. You've put holes in the same way as we saw earlier with the punch?
Yes, with a punch, yes. The 8-inch holes for the screws and 3/32 what's the next one down from 8 to 3?
16th.
3/30 seconds, isn't it? 3/30 seconds. Well, anyhow, the next one down from, you know, for this.
For the same,
of
same
course,
as
it's
the size.
It is the same. That's why it fits.
And then on the back of the bellows, we've got the pieces that hold the belt in place, which are these, which you start off with the flat sheet. How long is that?
2 inches.
2 inches, and you mark it on each end.
I mark it so there's a middle bit of 1 inch, which is this former is 1 inch wide as well. So
so that it's 2 inches long. Middle section is 1 inch, and then you've got half an inch at either end, so that it works
so
on
it's
your
quarter inch,
former.
quarter inch sort of thing, like sort of you know.
Yes.
That's
Okay, should we see how you make them next then?
yes.
Excellent.
Too tight. One of the things I should have got ready beforehand, isn't it? Right.
So this is making the little loop that goes on the hook.
That's why you need to anneal it. If it wasn't annealed, it would be it wouldn't want to bend. No. Pliers. Yes, that's all there is to it, except I like to get it nice and straight by go on, yeah. Well, that's as near as it'll get. Maybe if I squeeze it up a bit. No, it's got a bigger gap in it, but it's always the way when you're trying to.
You don't stand still much, do you, Tom?
Hmm?
And then there's the hook itself.
And then there's this part. Well, I would solder this onto here next, and then bend it. Use this former to put the to bend it over. Because when I solder it and quench it, it softens the metal and makes it much easier to bend, and you end up with a hook shaped like that.
Still.
That quite elegant curve is one of the easiest things to do. It just happens.
We're going to do this piece next.
That piece, so
it's showing how to do the curved piece of wire that goes on.
Oh yes, you want to do the curved. Anyhow, this is the former for. I think it's up the right radius. To make that little. Put it in there. It's looking a bit. That should be it. There, needs straightening out a bit, but
then that would, so you would push that into those holes, and again silver solder that in place.
When you're making these, all the corners and all the sharp edges are sanded off so that it's not all spiky like it is just now. It makes it look a bit better.
So the final bit is making these belt straps, and you have a different former for those?
Yeah. This is the former for making the belt straps with. And these are the... So, right, I need to make a hole. I think I'll just use an eighth of an inch as a good.
So you would put the holes in before you bend it rather than afterwards?
Yes. My hole punch won't do it after the bend. It just won't fit.
You can't get it in.
No, I've got to mark these in the centre. That's the only tricky bit really, getting them reasonably central. Yeah, I'll have to. You gotta make it stick there. Nope. See, it's got a sharper point on that end. So right. Now the next thing would be to put in the hole. So I'm making brass bellows, it would be this 8-inch holes. If I'm making nickel silver ones, I'd use slightly smaller diameter holes because of the screws I use, that's all. Anyhow, this is you've got to get that punch to engage with that. I think that's in the... Yes, I missed my microscope, and I'm going to sit beside the microscope and make sure everything's guided into position. We'll do it anyway. No, they're both squiffy, but never mind. It's
but it's the bending that we're...
It's the bending, right. Now I've marked, put 1.5 inch marks. Yes, I'm just marking 1/2 inch in from the so that when I put it in this, you see it should show on either side. I'll put it in the middle because there's only one.
And you could put several of these in at once, you were saying, Tom?
Oh yes,
so you don't have to
have a row of them in, yes. Make sure they're all in square and tighten it up. Nice and tight. And then Put that in there like that. Find some useful tool to, what I want to do is just bend these two lugs out. Right, now, I'm not far enough out yet, I'll just give them a bit more bend. Right, nose. That's it. So, release this. Like it must be easier to do the old-fashioned one, just a couple of cup washers and a screw, and it was it. I sometimes find it's quite handy just to give them a bit of a bend in the bend. That's how to do it. That's.
And the rest is just tidying up. But that's
yeah. That's a rubbish one. It's the holes are in the wrong place. The microscopes over there.
So normally when you're putting the positions for the holes there, you would sit and use a microscope to get the positioning exactly right.
Yes, I mean, for a bright light, I think, as long as there's a little, I don't know if you can see it on the end of that thing. Yes, projection. It's a tiny little projection in the centre. Yes. You usually feel that when that's engaged in the hole, but when you're trying to do it like that, it doesn't work.
That's great.
Right. Oh, there's plenty of water in. Right, that's the top one. Make sure it's facing downwards. Oh, it's hot. That's the bottom one. Piece of kitchen roll on top of it. That. Right. Okay. That's it. That's all there is to it.
So what's
just leave that until it's cold. It might take, I don't know, half an hour. It's you know, make sure everything's absolutely cold, and then the wood's set in position.
So Tom, how did you make the former?
Well, I had a stainless thing made out of stainless steel, a tube about that diameter with handles on it. Somebody made something out of a stainless steel tube, so I had to cut it up with an angle grinder. I cut it in two to get the width, and then I cut it downwards to get the two parts. And because it already had handles on it, it made a handy stand for it. But I don't know where the tubing came from.
How did you get it to the right curvature? Was that already there, or did you,
no,
have to achieve that
the
yourself?
one with these on was easy enough because I could put scaffold tube through the loops and bend it. But the other bit, I had to have scaffold tubes with a slot cut in the end so that I could slot it over the metal and bend it that way. But not using a sledgehammer was dangerous. It just bounced off. That's why it's got dents in it. But, in the end, I had a few goes to get the right curvature, the one that looked nice to me anyhow. So that's what I use now.
So would you know what the overall diameter of that curve would be, or is it just what is pleasing to your eye?
It was what was pleasing to me, really. At first I thought the curve was far too great and it didn't look right. And then I straightened it out a bit and it was too straight and it didn't look right, so I just put it back. And in the end it seemed to look a bit right. I have measured it, but I can't remember what the measurements are now.
Okay. So this is releasing the steamed wood from the press. And there we have the two bellows cheeks,
yeah,
steam curved.
Yes, I can see where it's misbehaved itself a bit, being satin wood, but it's not too bad. Nothing that I can't put right. No, it's damp now. I think it's best just to let it dry out a bit. Usually happens that it gets left overnight, but that's, you know...
So overnight would be sufficient, would it?
Sanding and cleaning up a bit.
And would you also just take the sharp edges off the wood at this stage, or would you wait till you stitched it?
I would take these edges off before I curved it, actually.
Ah, okay. So you left it in the clamp for about an hour?
About an hour, yes.
So it was really
nice and cold,
really
yes.
Cool.
Yeah, yes.
Once it's come out of the clamp, and it's interesting, you can see, I don't know whether you can pick it up on the camera, just how much that wood has bounced back from the curvature. And different woods will bounce back by different amounts.
Yes, I think that's probably the worst kind. Some woods will stay, well, you know, much more curved. All the British hardwoods would be, you know, stay bent, well, properly, but that strange kind of satin wood is a bit on the... You see, it's trying its best there as well.
So there are a couple of places where it's slightly split.
Yes.
Would that still be usable? Or
it would be usable, but I don't think I'd use them. I think it's all right for demonstration purposes, but not. I don't want to. I wouldn't want to palm that off on anybody. It's,
and would you expect there to be no splits at all in a good one?
Oh no, that's abnormal. That's what happens in the wood that is regarded as very poor steam bending wood. Right. Which that is well, not good. It's the worst I've come across, really. But it's still, you can see why you know what happens. Why some wood's even worse than that. I forget the same.
But if you had small cracks to repair, how would you do them?
A mixture of super glue and wood dust.
And then clamp it.
And then, well, it depends. If it's just a hairline crack, just rub it into the crack, and anything that's like that would need clamping to make sure it's lying flat. But yes. It would be all right if it.
But not up to your normal standards.
That's why these have been here all this time.
Yes.
Quite suitable for demonstration, but.
And how long would you leave it once it comes out of the clamp to dry out before you move on to the next stage? Well, it depends how wet it's got, really. Sometimes it gets a lot damp for some reasons, especially if I've had bigger, longer cheeks and the ends have almost been stuck in the water. They're quite wet. Yeah. So I just leave it until it feels dry. You can just go work on those straight away, I would say. Okay. Sand them down and drill the holes and things in them ready. And normally you would have taken the edges, the sharp edges off the wood before putting it in the clamp. How would you do that? I was just going to demonstrate. Can you just swap round here? I found instead of I used to use this the same way as I used it before with double-sided sticky tape, but I find if I mount this upside out like that in the stand outside, so this is pretty well flush with the top, and then I'll just where's the lever? You can lock it in a position, can't you? That's it. Yes. Lock it like that. Yes. And then just work the bellows round like that, and that just takes the corner off. Yes, quite nicely. And that's a shaped router. It's got a guide Yes.
wheel on there, and a curved cutter. And as I say, we used to use the other way with double-sided sticky tape, and then I found this was much easier, and it didn't use any sticky tape either.
Yeah. One final thing to say about the former, I was measuring it while we were waiting, and if you measure across there, it's about a full length of a 12-inch ruler.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And from the centre to there, just to give an idea as to the curvature, it's about a 2-inch plus 1/8 of an inch, 2 1/8 of an inch's drop. Just for a rough idea of curvature. So next we're going to put the holes in the bellows cheeks for the air inlet and the air outlet. So how would you do that, Tom?
Well, the inlet hole is it's a third of the way from the hinge end. It's 3 inches and 6 inches. It's just a nice measurement, I think. And it's on the template, so I've marked the position. Make sure it's exactly in the centre.
So you line it up in the centre, not of the actual wood, but of the grooves for the stitching.
Yeah.
So it's a third of the way from the end of the cheek.
Yes, it's 3 inches.
And then exactly central on the 2 stitching grooves. And there's no magic to that, it's just what's pleasing to the eye, and that's what
yes,
decided
it
it works nicest. And the hole on the bottom cheek for the outlet?
The outlet, well, I have it more ready to accommodate the outlet fittings, but the hole is, was it, what did you measured it?
We measured it as, a 2 inches and an eighth, 2 1/8 it was, I think, from the end of the wood. You want to just check that with a ruler and make sure it looks right.
Yes, it looks about
2 inches and
yes,
an eighth.
it's marked on the template anyhow.
Yes.
I wouldn't measure the template. I just wouldn't measure the distances. I just put the template on the
and then when you've marked the holes and you drill them, what sort of drills do you use for those holes?
These they've got a special name. I can't. Forstner, is that Forstner? They've got tungsten carbide cutters on them.
So it's got cutters around the edge, the pin in the centre, and it's got face cutters
as
well.
And they do the job very well. I usually drill about an 8-inch guide hole right through, and then these have got a tapered centre, which pretty well centralises it. And I will first just start a hole on the back, but just to cut a groove, so when I drill through from the front, it doesn't splinter through when it comes through.
So you do the inside hole.
I do the inside
groove first.
Yes, I will. And then just to make a deep. These cutters just dig in a little bit, and so when I go through from the front, it doesn't crash out the other side and carry lots of splinters and things. And the same with the smaller hole.
But the main hole itself you drill from the visible outside face.
Oh yes, just go straight through until, and when it's the back, because it's drilled at the back, it just makes a nice neat hole.
Good.
I've never had any bother there.
So what size holes do you drill, Tom?
The inlet hole, the large hole, is 25 millimetres, and the outlet hole is where the outlet fitting goes is 15 millimetres.
Okay.
And these are tungsten carbide cutters, and they've been very, very good to use actually. They come in all sorts of different configurations. These. Have you used them at all?
Yep, they're great. Really, really good.
Yep, it's good enough. Tied it up with a blade there's a bit of a step on it there, but it's easy enough to you know, a sharp blade will take that off easy.
And how deep should that be? Is it about 1/3 of the thickness?
As deep as you want it to be.
Okay, so it depends on the thickness of your leather and your
depends
your
on the
metal
thickness
plate.
of the leather and what you're feeling like at the time and all sorts of things. It doesn't matter if the metal stands up proud a bit. Usually you find the leather will lie, you know, it's in the rebate nicely, but the metal often stands a bit proud anyhow. So it's
okay. We've just seen you cutting the rebate for that plate to go on with the hinge. Final part of the bellows before we get onto the stitching is the air inlet.
yes.
So if you show us how you would take it out, you've got a clever way of getting it out.
And I won't credit two are a bit stiffer than one, but if you get one under and then another one, anyway, it makes it much easier to get them out.
And you said when you make it, you put a slight curve on the
inside,
inner side, so you can get your fingernail or your
rather like the burly ones that just set flat against it.
And the diameters of that, do you know those off?
30mm, I think that is, and it's turned from that to fit this 25mm hole.
So when you turn it, you turn it in on the inside, so you can get your credit cards underneath it, rather than a lot of them which are square to the wood.
Yes, I like the looks of it as well.
And the inner diameter fits your 25mm hole.
Yes.
The hole through the middle, do you know offhand what that diameter would be?
16mm.
16. Okay. And I've seen a lot of bellows inlets that are angled, but yours is square.
Yeah.
Any particular reason?
No, I haven't seen that. I'm not familiar with the angled ones. It was just the way I was shown really. And
you have a wire spring.
I put that on. It helps in a way, especially there was always said don't turn your bellows upside down because the valve will not, you know, it'll fall out. Not fall out. It'll fall too far open, but it can't if that's in.
And what do you use for that? Just a
bit of thin brass.
And that's bound in with the thread when you put it together. So you have that piece of wire there to stop it going out of line. What leather do you use for the valve itself? Is that?
This is the valve leather, which has got a very. It's quite soft and it seems to work very well. So.
And you use the soft side. The
soft side inwards,
against
and the shiny side.
Shiny on the away side.
Outside, yes. And I've got this as a cutter which cuts the exact diameter and leaves a little tab for stitch.
And you just use that with a hammer on a block?
Just a piece of wood and squeeze it in the vise and it chops and it cuts through nicely. You can see the holes that have been made there.
One further thing on the bellows inlet, quite often I've seen people flatten the top so that when you bind the leather in, but you've got a different way of doing it, haven't you? You cut a slot in here?
Yes, it's neater and I find it more satisfactory, and it's quicker as well.
And the way you do that is you've built this jig, it fits in here, that goes into your milling machine. Just
push it against the milling cutter and it...
and the cutter is
the cutter is like that. And you just push it against that and it's...
And that was, I think, was it 3/16 we looked at? Yes, 3/16. Yes. And it just cuts a little groove into which the leather fits beautifully without disturbing the round shape of the...
Well, it's easy to do and filing it anyhow.
It's very neat. So Tom, we're now come to the leather and the stitching of the bellows. First thing is, how do you work out the shape of the piece of leather that you're going to cut?
Well, with curved bellows, especially, I need a template, and this is the way I devised to make a template for curved bellows with bits of Dexian and.
So what you've done is you've fixed your two bellows cheeks into a former.
The form that the bellows would be if they were fully opened, 3 inches across there and 9 inches across there.
So that's 9 inches between
yes,
the ends.
Yes, that's this.
And 3 inches between the. Is it between the ends or is it between the points where it's going to actually be?
I don't think it's that important. I have 3 inches, 9 inches in it.
Okay.
It's that's as wide as anybody would want to open bellows, and a lot wider than some of the border pipe bellows used to open.
And then you use that paper. Just show us how you.
Yes, well, this is a bit of old wallpaper. Wrap it around the things like that, and it pays to have nice, greasy, dirty hands, because then you can find where the.
You just follow the line of the wood and it marks it.
Press it against the bellows, and
then when you unroll it again,
you unroll
you can
it.
cut that out.
You can cut, yes, and you make sure this probably isn't set up exactly right. I'd want these exactly vertical.
Yes.
You know, so that everything's parallel there, and. Check that the distances are exactly right, and then put the paper on, make it, cut it out, and then fold it so it's folded right across the middle, so that your template is exactly this. Each half of the template is exactly the same. And you've got the. And
then you've got a couple here. You've made wooden templates, so to save you having to do that each time.
When I do that, I'll use the paper to draw on the wood and make a wooden template. Cut them out on the bandsaw and finish them off on the belt sander as usual.
But that one there.
That is a straight. That's a template for straight bellows.
And then this is your template for curved bellows.
And that's a template for curved bellows.
So it's a huge difference, isn't it? By having the curve in the shape of the bellows. Excellent. Thank you.
These are slightly longer than they need to be. So when I made the bellows, I've got about ½ inch of sort of leather to cut off on each end when I've overlapped them at the hinge end. But it's it varies, so it seems to work very well like that anyhow.
Okay. And in terms of leather, what are you looking for in the leather that you use?
Leather that's not too soft. It's got to have a slight amount of stiffness to it, and about 1.5 to 2 millimeters thick. Not much, no thicker than that, and not too stiff either. If it's very stiff, it's difficult to use, and if it's too soft, it tends to balloon. So it's just a matter of finding the right leather, really, and the leather that's just beside Ian is the stuff I've got, which seems to be okay.
So Tom, we're going to do the stitching now. What sort of thread are you going to use? This
thread I'm using is 1 millimeter thick across flat polyester thread. It's Ritzer Tiger thread, I think that's what the cobbler calls it anyhow. You can find it under those names. And you can't get wax twins anymore, so you've got to use this.
And do you wax it at all, or do you just use it?
It's very well waxed, this thread. So
when you get it, or do you do the waxing? Yes,
when you get it. Otherwise, I would wax it, but it doesn't need waxing.
Right.
And but it's easy enough to you can thread a needle all right, but when you're sewing, it's an awful nuisance if it comes off.
Yes.
But if you pull it quite a bit through, and about 3/4 of an inch from the end, wherever you choose really, stick the needle through the middle of the thread.
Yes.
Pierce it like that, so you've got it pierced, and pull that through, pull that over the top, and you cannot pull it off.
Oh, brilliant. And what sort of needle are you using? Is it just an ordinary sewing needle?
This is a saddler's needle. I couldn't do that with an ordinary needle.
Yeah.
It's the reason you use saddler's needles, if you stitch from each one goes one side and the other. With wax twins, it used to be simultaneously both could go through together. With needles, if they're too thick, you've got to put one through and pull it tight, and try to pull it to one side, and when you push the other one through, you've got to try not to pierce the thread that you've already done.
And do I see you've got another needle on the other end?
Another needle, yes, that's it. I'll do the same with this needle. Just lock it.
So it's a single piece of thread with a needle locked on each end of it.
Yes, that's all. It's and then that pulls over the top.
And roughly what length of thread have you got?
I measured it, and it was one of those arbitrary measurements. I put a mark on the bench. So
if you just hold it out so we can see roughly.
That's the length. Yes,
it's about an arm stretch.
Yes, it's.
Okay, and then how do you start?
Well, I have to find the centre of the. Being curved bellows, and I'm starting with the inner cheek first. That's the inner one there, the bigger curve. And I want to find the centre of that. So I just sort of, and then all I need is an awl to shove a hole through.
So this is a
yes, that'll be where I start.
So that's a pointed awl with a comfortable wooden handle in the back that you just use to make holes in the leather.
Different. I've got a whole range of awls, but the two here, that's a bit thinner. That's a thick. I've got a thicker one. This is about 1.6 millimeters, and this is a bit thinner. It's if I find out which is the one that suits the thread and the holes you're using. And
so you've made a hole.
I have a 2 millimeter awl as well, but I find it's just a wee bit thick for using this thread. But let's see, where is it? I put the blooming bellows cheek down and lost it now. Oh, there it is. What I want is and get through there. Being all in one length, you can put a knot in the middle of it. It makes life easier somewhere because you just pull it through and you hit the knot. And if you do that, you've got to if you just have a single thread, you've got to. Now this is where I know that it goes through the central hole in these bellows.
So you go from the inside out.
It goes from the yes, and I'm checking to make sure. That's why when I'm drilling holes, I make marking holes. I always make sure there's one in the centre. So when I start there, and I can put them in ready to go. Now because I haven't got a knot in it. I'm trying to find a small pin, panel pin sort of thing. If you shove it in there. This is just to make sure that I don't pull the whole thread through. If I had a knot in it, I wouldn't need to do this. But then there'd be a knot in the way. Kitty. That's it. Right, now. They should be pretty equal. Yeah, nearest on it. Now, all you need to do is the most boring part of all. You stick the awl through, make sure it's on the, you know, come through the leather, give it a shove, and make a hole.
So you're holding the leather so that the edge of the leather is in line with the edge of the wood.
Yeah, keep the leather together.
And you're just pushing your awl through.
Push
to
that
make the hole
now. That will.
first.
No, pull that tight. That's the reason if I've got that pin in, I can pull it tight.
Yes.
Because what I want to do now is push this one through this other direction without piercing the threads. It happens,
Yes.
but it's best not to, and it's much easier if you got pliers to pull it through as well. So you just do that innumerable times, and you get down to the end there. But
So you start bringing.
I often have found instead of, you know, carrying on stitching like this, I prefer to do.
So you start by bringing the needle up from the inside out, and then you take the other thread that's already out and you push that.
Yes,
in.
it's just one thread going one direction, and
Yes.
so that's what stitching is all about. Just, you know, it just goes like that,
Yes.
and it bores you there.
And,
But,
and you keep it tight, or how do you manage to
pull
stop
it tight. Yes, just on my fingers, there's a thickened patch there, and on the other hand, it's on my little finger for some reason. But with doing that, it's noticeably thickened bit on that finger. Now, what I've found to make life a lot more interesting, or to me, you know, is instead of stitching all the time, would be to shove a hole in, put a pin in the hole. I'm not doing very. That's it, put a pin in the hole. Just go along doing that.
So you're just putting the holes in, and then you'll go back and do the stitching through the
do
wall.
this instead of stitching, just put a pin in the hole. I don't know if these are not normal panel pins. I don't think they've got a little head on them. I don't know where they came from, but they're very useful.
How far along would you go before you go back and do the stitching?
I sometimes go right to the end. It looks great.
Yeah.
You know, a whole lot of little
Yeah.
knobs like that. It looks very pretty, but
Yes.
it's the other side looks a bit drastic. So that's all it is really.
And I see you've started with the inside bellows cheek.
Yes,
Is that important, or does it not really matter which one you start with?
I always do it. I've never certain things like that. I don't know if it's important or not. I doubt it, but it's like when you come to this, do you put it that way or that way?
Yeah.
I always do it
Habit.
a certain way, and it's just one of those things. I think it's just a matter of consistency. I don't suppose it matters if you started off the outside. It's actually I always start the inside because it's easy to see with this big hump on the leather there.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to spot. But I don't think it probably doesn't make any difference.
What can go wrong with the stitching? Is the tension that you put on the thread very important, or can that be
You pull it,
remedied?
just pull it as tight as you can. That's all. I've never seen it cut into leather yet, and this is about as tough as the thread as you can get. It doesn't look much, but by you try snapping this stuff.
So you pull it through tight with a pair of pliers so you can get a bit more.
No, I pull it. I use the pliers. I pull it by hand like that. What I use the pliers for is if I'm stitching it up like that. You see, I always pull it Jackie Boyce for he was doing bags. I always pull it tightly to one side and put the other one in. Now, that's it. Now what I'm using the pliers for is just getting it there, doing that. Because I can't. It often comes through, but not always. So you've got to. These pliers with nice smooth jaws, not sharp serrations that'll chew the needle up. But then when I've done it like that, then I would pull the thing tight like that. It's, you know, pretty hard. You can see where it cuts into my hand.
So
leave the last two holes just to give you enough leeway to bend things about a bit. Then pinning the leather in position where it should be when it's stitched up.
So at this
like
point, Tom, you've stitched
all
the way around both sides.
Yeah, both sides. I've got to the hole before the last one. The last ones have just got the pins in still. And I've marked out the leather so it's just, it comes to that distance on each side. It cut off there. It was a bit more, as I say, a bit longer. But
so how much overlap would you have roughly?
What I aim for is an overlap that I can push it back. Can you see the stitch holes there? Those two centre stitch holes are the ones I want to have my rows of stitching against. So it's quite a good overlap. It's from there to there.
Okay, and then you glue the
I glue these together, and then I can say mark this where and draw a line parallel to the end,
yes.
or next to those two centre stitching holes. That's why I want the stitching holes in the two straddling this, not one in the centre, but two holes, so that each one hole is opposite each row of stitching,
yes.
which is a 1/4 inch apart. Or, you know, and then draw a line and mark out where I'm going to do the stitching, 1/4 inch apart. You can see I've got it marked there.
Yes.
And then this is held in the vise. And it's just so that I
and
can.
You've cut a groove through the middle, so your needle can go through.
I can shove an hole through it quickly because I've got a whole series of holes there, and I can do those in a very quick time because this is just a backing really for pressing against. You can see the rows of holes in.
So you just use that with the awl, and then you take it off the wood and do your stitching all the way up again.
Yes, stitch it using the usual.
And
stitching.
then how do you fix the other cheek to the leather?
Same way, just start mark the centre of this and go around.
Work your way around back to the top.
Go right round to the end. I don't need to, I go right to the end and do both sides. And especially doing end bits, I find it's quite advantageous to pin it rather than to stitch it to start with. You can put a row, have a row of pins along there, and then take one out at a time and stitch it. And it's much easier to do. Stitching it as it goes, it's pretty tough stuff. It's layers of leather with glue in, and it's fighting against everything. But once once you're doing it with the pins in it, it holds it in position. So the next stitch is, just pull the pin out and it's ready to go.
Yeah. So Tom, after all of that stitching, we end up with something that looks a bit like this. Neatly sewn here, sewn off all the way around, and you've stitched in the arm strap.
Yes, you mustn't forget to do
well.
that before you put in the purfling,
yes.
otherwise...
So after doing all of the stitching, you then put in the purfling, which was the silver birch that we saw you cutting at the beginning. So that was the 2mm wide strip of silver birch. How do you push that in? How do you put that into the stitching?
I use pliers. I can go around the pliers, just nip all the way around.
So do you put any glue in or anything first?
Yeah, always got. I put that. There's whatever it's called. Is glue on the in there. Anyhow, it's a white.
Is it the UPVC?
It's
PVA?
It's more sophisticated stuff, but it's that kind of stuff. Yes, I'd fill the whole groove with glue, and then start. I'd miter the corner,
yes,
and squeeze it into the groove all the way around.
So just with a pair of pliers doing this all the way.
Help it in, especially when you get it. You've got to be gentle, otherwise.
Yes.
You don't need to steam it or anything. It's quite flexible. And occasionally it has nasty habits like breaking, but not very often. And get round to here, and I need about this. Then I've got to put my little miter block in and cut the angle again.
Yes.
And then squeeze it up to the end and look at
so
it.
each is 45 degrees, so you get a really nice finish.
And then I do the straight bit last. And it's all standing proud. It's all squeezed in tight with pliers.
And then how long do you leave that before you sand it off?
Not long. It doesn't take long for the glue to set. And
you just put it in the belt on the belt sander then to do it, or would
no,
you do it?
No. I've got one of those. I don't know. It's got a triangular thing in it.
The handheld.
Yeah, it sort of reciprocates it. It's good for cutting vertical holes in things, slots and things as well. But
and you just do that by hand and go around and tidy it up.
Just get it down to the level, then finish it off with coarse, medium, fine sandpaper, and
just by hand with a block.
And then put it on the polishing mop. And
when you say polishing mop, you mean the calico mop that spins around?
A whole collection of things, yes. Just there's a special compound you can get for polishing wood and horn and stuff like that. It seems to work quite well.
So you just hold it onto the mop to give it a good polish.
Yeah, just anyhow,
and have you treated the wood in any other way at this stage? Have you oiled it or?
Oh yes, I usually do all. When I've sanded it, I'll get it all ready, because the next stage is putting all the furniture on, and that makes it difficult to do anything with. So I'll get as much of the finishing done as possible.
So you sand it, then do you oil it before you put it in the polishing mop?
Yes, I think I always let the oil soak in and dry.
What sort of oil do you use?
It's what's it called? Chestnut finishing oil. And it's mostly tung oil, I think, which is a very good, set. I think it's a Chinese tung nut or something like that. And
you just paint it on.
Just paint it on and let it dry. If there's any excess, I'll wipe it off. And make sure it's had enough to soak in,
and then use the polishing mop to finish it.
And then finish it off with the polishing mop.
With the polishing mop, do you always do it with the grain, or would you do it against the grain?
Whichever works, or both. Sometimes I might even put a bit of wax, proper wood wax polish on it, chestnut wood wax, and
then the wood is effectively finished.
Yes, that's it, and then you can put the various furnishing on.
So the final stage before you finish it with all the furnishings is to treat the leather and make it airtight.
Well, it's usually airtight anyhow.
I've
tried this, and I've put the cork in, put a bit of...
And that's just with the stitching before you've treated it?
Yes, that's it. It's pretty airtight as it is. If the leather's soft enough to have time, the leather's been soft enough to form into shape, you don't need to put any proofing inside.
Okay.
But
it's normal. You'd normally proof it.
Yes, I think
So
it helps.
what do you use for the proofing? Should I take
Mixture of. I've been using a mixture of beeswax and neatsfoot oil, about 1 part of beeswax to 5 or 6 parts of neatsfoot oil. Weight or volume doesn't, it's a very rough measure. It's not a.
And you've got a pan there with some of your mixture.
And this is the stuff that you heat it up and stir it, make sure it's nicely mixed up.
Do you want to just pull that up so we can have a look?
Right.
So it's just an ordinary cooking pan. You do it on the stove?
No, I do it the same way as I do this, which is. Should
I bring that up? Can we just have a look in the pan briefly?
Yeah.
So that's the sort of
it's
mixture
just,
that
yes,
you end up
it's
with.
very like lard in a way. It's quite,
And you just melt that on the stove?
No,
the neatsfoot oil and the wax?
I use a hot air gun.
Okay.
I do it in the garage.
Yes.
It's safer.
What, like a paint stripper type?
Yes, one of those proper hot air guns. That's not a hairdryer. One that make your hair curl. I think. Just blast it in the teapot until it melts, and keep on going until it's almost smoking. It's got to be very hot, otherwise it just congeals when
Can
you
it
pour
be
it.
too hot?
I don't know. I've never tried.
But it doesn't matter how hot it is in terms of when you pour it into the.
Well, I've had it. It's so hot that you can't hold the leather. It's too hot, and it might not be hot enough to fry chips in, but it's not far off.
And so then what do you do? You've got it in here. You've heated it up.
Pour excess of this stuff into here. Put the corks in. Well, leave that cork in. Pour it in there. Stick that cork in. Give it a good shake, always like that, and then pour out the excess. Usually find about 60 or 70 grams of gunk will stay inside. It's surprising how much is, because it's got to coat everything inside. But then just let it. Oh no! While it's still hot, the next thing is to make sure that it's. That's why that thing is in the vice. I can jam it on the vice, make sure it's got.
You just have a piece of plywood in a vice that you push it down onto.
It helps, yes, and then make sure that these creases come outwards and things like that, and just squeeze it into shape.
Into the right shape
and
for the leather.
When it's into shape, get them nice and flat. Make sure the leather's At first I didn't used to do that. It was 20 years ago. It was I don't think Collins did. If you notice those bellows of Collins, lopsided as hell. And it happens if you just do it naturally and fold it up, and so you often have to be a bit particular about poking and bending and tweaking the leather to make the damn thing like where you want it to.
It's all still very hot.
So
at
while
this
it's
stage.
hot, that's why it's best to keeps it hot and pliable.
And then do you strap the bellows together? While
Yeah.
it cools?
I was going to say I've got some little webbing straps with buckles that the kind that you pull tight.
Right.
And so I put one. Squeeze it as flat as possible, put one strap round this end and one round this end, and just leave them there until they're nice and cooled.
What, for a day?
Just let it
really cool down.
It's always like just let everything cool down, and then they're ready for.
So the final thing then is you just fit all of the fittings we saw you making earlier.
Oh yeah.
Screw them into place, fit your valve here.
Yeah. I always use this as the sides of the bellows rather than the actual wood itself.
So you use the
use the side of the groove.
The purfling.
And this because of the type of stop I've got, you can vary the distance if you don't watch out, and
And it's the white line
the white line is what hits you in the eye, so that's the centre, you know. That so I always, if I've got a, is there any rulers in here at all? No. I put a ruler across and note where the you know, whichever piece of the loop fitting goes on, I'll put the ruler across and make sure that it's in the centre.
Yes.
And
do you use a bradawl or something to start the holes before you put the screws in?
No, I've got, what have I got? Just a little. Actually, the latest thing was Stan brought some interest. I don't know, he goes to some place called Barry's. I don't know if you come across Barry's. Do you know this guy? I don't know. He's somebody who deals in all sorts of things. Stan's
machinery, yes.
Anyhow, he had these pointy things. I said, great, you know, they've got almost a little file on one end, so if you wanted to undercut a hole, it'd be ideal for that. And I said, oh, to me, it's just put it, you know, sharpen the point a bit more, and I've got a marvellous scriber which I can just mark where the holes go. And then do you put the screw straight in? I always try to drill a guide hole. I've got a, I don't know, it's a bit thinner than the screw. And how far in would you drill the hole? As far as the stop. So you've marked it so it doesn't go all the way through it? Oh, no, no. So you've got you've made it so that it'll only go in. Yes, especially when I'm putting these plates on here. Yes. I cut the ends off the screws so they're a bit shorter. So you know your screw, and when I drill the holes in here, I have a stop on the drill that only allows the drill to go almost through, but not. Otherwise, you tend to get rows of holes on there on the side, and it happens, but not very often because I've got a good. I think they're made out of old bike spokes. These stops, you can slide them a bit like. Oh, it's meat holes. A bit like that kind of thing, but on a drill. And so there's only a certain amount. So once it hits the end of the stop, it goes to the right distance. So this is what they look like when you've fitted all those elements of furniture onto it. The last piece is to connect the bellows to the pipes themselves. Yes. And your method of doing that, you turn that in the lathe. Yeah. So that it fits onto the outlet. You turn the other end so that fits the blowpipe of the pipes. And unfortunately, blowpipes vary in diameter, depending whether made by Colin or Dave Burley. Yes. But your method of making bellows is really easy because you just need interchangeable ones of these depending on what the fitting is here. That's what I find, which is really useful. And you join them together with a piece of what is this? It's silicone. It's sold for car vacuum hoses or something like that in cars. I'm not quite sure what, but it's not cheap at all. But you only use about 3 inches is about the depending standard. On the size of your stomach. Yes. Yes. And there we have a finished set of Tom Sweeney bellows. Yes. Edmund Spriggs says, help. We'll need a longer one. So says he says, I don't know why he wanted a longer one. I think he's getting a bit big around the middle, but I sent him it and he's quite pleased with it. But I used to make stitched up leather tubes, but they still needed reinforcing in size and I find that I like that, and it was approved by the master, so that was good enough for me. If he said it was a good idea, it was. And you can cover that with a sleeve of velvet. Oh yes, depending on what colour velvet your pipe bag is. Yes, So thank you very much, Tom. It's been a fantastic day. Really interesting. Is there anything you'd like to say to anybody who, watching this video, would like to have a go at making their own bellows? I don't know. it's always worth having a go. I mean, when I started, I didn't know anything about it, but I've had a lot of fun doing it, and you know, it's just something you get to know about. But if you just want one set of bellows, you could cut them out with a jigsaw or something like that, and you know, you don't need a router and all the rest of it. But there are lots of ways around all the little problems you come across. As long as you can get hold of the right leather, and it's always around somewhere.
Well, thank you very, very much. There's a lot of pipers are extremely grateful to you for the quality of the bellows you make, because as every piper knows, a good set of bellows is really important to being able to play the pipes.
Yeah.
And yours are renowned as being fantastic. So thank you, Tom.
Thank you for doing this as well. I think it's been a hard day's work.
But invaluable. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad. I like to help, but I've never had that, you know, great faith in myself to be. I was surprised when what I do is, you know, right.